Welcome back to the Indo-German Startup Week, our final day here, the Investor Day. Now we have a slot that I've been very much looking forward to because it's one of the most important. It's all the little intercultural, interpersonal things that can go wrong between a founder and an investor within one country already, but certainly when you're operating across border. There's so many little traps you can stumble into, things you can stumble over, and we really want to shed some light into some hiccups, failures, and learn from the experience from some seasoned founders today. I'll have 3 founders here in the pipeline, but we're going to go step by step. So I'll have a chat with each of them for around 15 minutes, and then in the end, we'll get everyone back together and have a panel discussion and also answer your questions. So I'll just announce the order so that my founders in the pipeline know which way we'll take. I'll start with Ashish, then come to Maria Lisa, and end with Diksha. So let's start with you, Ashish. Welcome. Can we have you on screen already? Perfect.
To me, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the entire team of Indo-German Startup for organizing this.
Great to have you on board, Ashish. Ashish Iron, he's the co-founder of Cognitensor, an AI startup. He's also made it on one of the most prestigious lists, and that's Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia. And he also runs Blitz Business, actually a project focused on startup success as well as failure stories. So you do not only have a rich experience yourself, but you can even source from other failure stories.
Absolutely.
Well, Ashish, where shall we start? Let's start with you personally, and then we can tap into some things that you generally observe that are maybe common, misconceptions maybe you have as a founder when you go into business or when you start talking to VCs. But what are maybe some of the most important personal lessons you took in your founder career?
Absolutely. So the way I started my journey back in 7-8 years ago, I was a researcher back in Germany. I used to work under a professor, and I was like, I need to start my own business. And that's how I started my entire journey. And not being very aware of the entire situation, even people used to ask, what is a product market fit, right? I mean, so I just sort of jumped into the entire ecosystem. And one thing I sort of quickly realized was back in the day around 2014, 2015. The thing was when I started giving pitches, I mean, when you start, you don't have a product, right? You have presentations with you, you have an idea which you want to execute and build something, right? So the thing was, I was trying to fit into the VC perspective or the investor perspective a lot. I was trying to change my pitches. I was trying to fit into how they look at a company or how they look at a startup. I think it took a really, I think it was a rookie mistake, if I can say so, because I should have stuck to my own vision and goal instead of getting deviated by all the different investors. So that was my very early learning by pitching almost to 30, 40. I mean, there was definitely a lot of constructive feedback, but after a certain point, people, all the investors have their own mechanism, the way they look at an investment. So, I mean, sticking to your own fundamentals is very important when you start this entire game, because it is a little tiring and it takes a lot of time. So you have to be very sure, what are your fundamentals, what is the vision, and stick with it. And I think it works out eventually.
That's really hard to find the right line there between sticking to your personal vision, believing in it, being the expert for it, but then being open for feedback, but not getting swayed too much by the different feedback you gather.
Absolutely.
All right. So may I ask what kind of researcher you started as? What did you research?
Because, yeah. Sure. So I graduated from Oxford. My research was in machine learning. I wrote to the professor. She was leading one of the research labs in Darmstadt. And I just wrote to her and she said, yes, please come work with us. So my sort of thesis overlapped with her work, and it was groundbreaking at that point in time. So that's how I started.
May
And
that's
that's
just a
the
cliche.
product I built.
Yeah. Ashish, I'll just put a cliche out there, but you started as a researcher. You really started with probably with a focus on the product. Maybe you brought in some business skills, but it certainly probably didn't come from the studies you did. So, how was your path there from like having a technical product approach to then also having to focus on the business side, or maybe getting somebody on board to cover that angle for you? Like, what were your learnings there, or where you realized, wow, this is really different than I thought?
I think that's a great point. That because all the years you have been prepared technically, right? You know in and out of the technology what you're building, what you want to do with it. But ultimately, when I started, as you mentioned, right, there are other aspects to a startup, and I think I was very fortunate enough. There were many mentors during my journey, which sort of pitched in and helped me grow as an individual to be a completely an all-rounder in the different aspects from sales, pricing, negotiation, all these different aspects. I think it's very important as a founder to understand and realize your own limitation. And I think from day one, I was very much aware of things which I'm good at, things which I'm not good at. So the idea was always to delegate things which I'm not good at and trust the other person's opinion rather than your own in the domain which you are not very much sure of. So I think that was my strategy from the beginning until now. Even there are domains which I've built expertise on, but still a lot to learn.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think now? I mean, I also want to tap into that pool of experiences you gathered from other founders just by running Blitz Business. So you interviewed countless founders on their hiccups, on their failures. Did you recognize some patterns, some mistakes that are done very often, or that specifically young founders run into very often?
Absolutely. I think that's a very interesting question. I do maintain an internal list and try to see what's the gap between all these different founders. So we have recorded over 100 plus episodes and have a listener base of 10,000 plus. So what came out, there were a couple of things. I mean, for every founder, one thing which came out very clearly was, at the end of the podcast, I always used to ask, what is the one thing or two things you wanted to do again if you start from scratch? And there, everyone's almost 80% of them sort of had the learning. The takeaway was wish they could raise capital much faster, they could grow much faster, execute much faster. And the second was they could hire better teams, invest more in the beginning in building teams. So I think for everyone, initial few years, you're trying to figure it out how to build things together in the right fashion. And for almost all of them, I mean, the key thing was if they can do in terms of raising capital, hiring better talent, etc., building the product much more faster, going to the market faster, all these different aspects.
Mm-hmm. That's something that I heard from a lot of very experienced founders as well, that they're like, you really have to focus on the team. This is what's going to make or break your idea. And if you set on the fast team, on the wrong team, you're just stuck with them for a while. So I think that's something that I heard from Anna Alex, actually, a very experienced German founder. She said, now having founded several projects, I really make sure I get the A players in my team, because that is one of the biggest things to get your idea forward. So as an Indian founder...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean...
Please continue.
If I can just comment one point here. So, I mean, absolutely, it's very, very important, because at the end of the day, you want to minimize your rework, because if you can hire someone experienced in the beginning, you can avoid a lot of many mistakes, a lot of decision, which you're trying to figure it out yourself. So I think hiring in the beginning is absolutely crucial to identify yourself, the company, and build the right product.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is specifically important in the communication with investors? Usually, what's your approach there? Really put the cards on the table, because I guess as a young founder, maybe you over pitch a little bit, you promise too much. So is it better to be just authentic, or do you have to play that game? We all know it, whether it's applying for a VC or just applying for a job. We feel like everybody else is adding that extra bit that's not really based in reality. So I have to do it as well in order to be on the same level. So is that a risk to run into?
So that's a very, very interesting question. As a founder, my personality is a little different. I have started businesses only in B2B space. So most of the comments I usually got was in terms of your numbers are too conservative. We are looking at 200, $300 million in like, and those were always conservative. So I used to be taking a lot of small step and to build the organization. But coming back to the question, so it depends. For different set of investors or different set of VCs, they look things very differently. For certain, the technology might be the biggest thing they're looking at. They are not really concerned about the revenue numbers in terms of, because if they have the belief in the technology, it can scale well. I mean, in the beginning, whatever number you will give will be, I mean, to be honest, will be wrong at the end of the day. The market sizes, the projection, these are best estimates at the end of the day, which you have written in the presentation or in the deck. And for certain investors, I mean, team is really important. The culture we are building is really important. For others, I mean, they do tend to look into the history of the company, if there it is any couple of years running, what is the revenue and etc. So I mean, it really depends on what sort of investor you're dealing with and what is the thesis. That's the way I look at it, right? What are their fundamental beliefs? And what sort of, and ultimately numbers also, if I can comment on that, numbers is typically, for certain investors, they look at a multiplier of 10 to 20x, right? For others, I mean, I have met funds, family offices where they are very much content with 70 to 8x, 9x, returns. So it depends on the ambition, the kind of fund, the way it is structured, what is their sort of commitments to their LPs, etc.
So really research your investor beforehand before you go into the pitch and make sure you, on the one hand, know if it's an actual fit for you or if they have a wrong focus in regards to your mission, but also know what kind of trigger points you can touch when speaking to them. May I ask you, as an Indian founder in Germany, were there some intercultural traps you ran into, some prejudices you had to overcome? What was your impression there, speaking specifically to German investors?
So I mean, typically not interacted with many German investors, but whatever I had experience with interacting with them, I think they've been very generous and very guiding in terms of very clear and upfront what they are looking for, what is the business model they prefer, not prefer, instead of, I mean, delaying and saying, okay, maybe we'll see, etc. So I mean, guiding at the same time giving a very constructive feedback, how you should structure position and at what relevant stage we can come in, or if this is the right stage for us, we will really like to come in. So
so you already had probably around 4, maybe even more years to get accustomed, to a different culture. What do you think if you had come here fresh out of the gate, having studied in India? What do you think you would have not known yet?
That's a tricky one. So I mean, so the question is in terms of if I was studying in India,
just intercultural differences, preconceptions, something that's just so normal for you, and then you realize, wow, it's really not normal for this German guy sitting in front of me or this German woman. Like, why do they not get my point?
Absolutely. I mean, so yes, absolutely. So I mean, my first job, when I talk to friends, investor, anyone, my first job was in Germany. So there is a lot of ingrained culture I've taken and the way I build companies, the small stuff which I've picked up from my doing research there back in the day. So, I mean, being thorough in your details, if you're pitching to a German investor, I think it's critical. You should be very much aware of the number you're pitching and have a complete idea and a plan instead of just giving, okay, if someone asks you how much capital you're raising, you can say $5 to $10 million. That really doesn't work, right? The split needs to be very clear. If you're raising $5 million, where exactly it will be going. I mean, the detail, the devil is in the detail, and you have to be aware of all the integrate, the necessary details while pitching.
So get it down to the last digit, basically. So it's a cliche that obviously is rooted in reality somehow, that Germans love really their structure and precision. So make it 5,400,000, something like that.
That really helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Ashish. I think we've covered a lot of ground already, and I would love to jump to our next speaker and get you back in probably around about 30 minutes to then have a joint discussion later on. But please also be active in our chat if you're parallel also dialed in into the platform. If not, just be back here in around about 30 minutes. And that brings us to a German founder, to Maria Lisa Bruckert. She's a co-founder and CCO of Squin, which is really interesting because you're in the beauty sector, but add tech to it. So they have a personalized AI skin advisor app, something that sounds very interesting. I think we have to hear maybe a sentence about it before we start talking about hiccups and failures. Welcome, Maria Lisa.
Hi, thank you for having me. And of course, I can give you a short intro to skin. So the vision is a little bit bigger than what you just mentioned. So what we want to do is to combine beauty and health here, because everyone has skin, right? And it's super important to keep your skin healthy. But how can you know everything about something that is pretty unique for everybody? So therefore, we created our coach that helps you, of course, with all the beauty stuff, so products and lifestyle and how to eat, what to eat. But on the other hand side, we also have our dermatologists who can then give you a real medical treatment as well and help you if it comes to really skin issues. So we are like a combining bridge.
Let's start right there. I loved that pitch. You really got it on point in under 30 seconds. And just when you started with everybody cuts skin, I mean, it's such a, let's say, classic start for a pitch. Everybody knows this, everybody knows that, but it really worked and you got me right there. So how long did it take you to get to that pitch? And what non-working pitches did you have in the meantime?
Yeah, so to be honest, we were really privileged last year. So we have been in different accelerator programs, and I think our pitch was an ongoing project for a lot of people, about 6 to 12 months. So we had this great product and we know that we can really have an impact, but we talked to, I would say, around 100 VCs. And I found out nobody really gets my story. So I was really, really upset. And then I took all the experts from my accelerator programs. We sit together and try to find a storyline that is so easy to bring to the people that you really understand.
May I get in there though? That's,
sure.
I think, you didn't describe it as such, but looking at it from the outside, that would be a first learning and let's say in brackets, failure, maybe not, but you pitched to 100 VCs already. Before then, you got, let's say, the professional help to fine-tune your pitch. So maybe a learning that you could pass on is pitch on to 10 VCs and then get and then get a pitch straight. So not to burn the other 90.
Yeah, I think there were two facts you should know about that.
Yeah.
So one is I'm not alone, so I have a co-founder, and he is already a serial founder. So he have a company also in the US, and pitching in the US is quite different. So it's really about vision, think big, show me that you have an impact. And I think this was the thing we did from the beginning. So we wanted to bring these US spirit into our German company. And as a little bit to what we heard before, it's the same for me. So we pitched in our US style to German VCs, and we just found out, okay, it was way too much. So we put in so much information, so much things. We wanted to show what is going on, but it was just too complicated and too much. So people doesn't really get what we want to give them.
So if I try to imagine that would have sounded like, I don't know, worldwide, I don't know, 3 billion women suffer under this and this and that, and this is where we come in, and that, okay.
And especially if it comes, of course, I mean, skin is a mobile application, so it's not like a physical product you can show and say that is it, right? So if you have a mobile application, you have different KPIs and different topics that are pretty important. So there's a lot also behind the product. And if you want to bring all these aspects into one pitch, I mean, into 10 to 15 minutes, it's way too much, right? So we needed a lot of time to really clarify what is the one story out of all these aspects we have in our like application that can really fit to investors. And to be honest, if I'm pitching skin to an investor or to a customer or to a beauty brand or to a dermatologist, I have now like 4 or 5 pitch decks. And depending on my audience, I choose one of them. So it's really like also you have to be open to like create different storylines around the same product to really find the right fit between your audience and what you are like, right, what you want to achieve, right? Mm-hmm. So it's depending on the goal as well.
I'll jump back a bit to something that you were starting to talk about until I came in with a different question. And that is like how you adjusted to the German VC or what they want to hear, because I think that might be interesting to all our Indian founders probably listening is, so what do they want? What are the bits and pieces in your pitch that are directly targeted at German founders? VCs, sorry, German VCs, yeah.
Yeah, I got it, it's fine. At first, it's of course business model. How do you plan to make revenue and how much, how fast? That was super important. And we also found out that it needs to be something scalable. We got so much questions about how do we want to scale that into different markets? Why do you think you can grow your community? So that is something super important. They want to be sure that the money they put in will have a bigger value very soon. That was one of the experiences. And the other thing was really like, they want to understand what makes you different from others. So for example, they have already portfolio companies. And I thought at the beginning, okay, if they have a portfolio company in the same segment, that's a good thing because they already know the market, but it's not always true. Because if this company is not like performing pretty well, or if they have really like bigger challenges to face, they will adopt this into your thing. So it's not just about inform yourself about the VC, also about the portfolio companies and make sure that it's not a failure. Because if they invest a lot of money in something similar also to the business model, they may be afraid of doing that again.
So you really have to see what kind of maybe preconceptions they see you with and what kind of lens they're looking for.
Yeah. And maybe one more thing, sorry, just came to my mind. That was also a thing for us. So I mentioned skin is an application, right? So it's a B2C product. But me personally, I'm electrical engineer. I was working for Siemens Managing Board, so very B2B focused. And my co-founder has a fuel cell company, so also more B2B tech. And the first question we always get like, why should you both be able to create a B2C product? So where's the know-how coming from? That was super important for everybody. Why can we be sure that you can manage that? So what we have done then is to create a great advisory board with really like paid advisory or share advisory so that people are really on board. And we have now an expert for every part of our business. And that was also something very valuable for the funding, because if somebody was asking, why do you think you can manage the growth? I just mentioned, oh, I have this person on board. He already did this, this, and this, and he helps me to have the right strategy here. But,
okay, so use the advisory board as a vehicle to complement whatever skills or whatever angle you're lacking in your founder team. If you think back, I think you started in the beginning of this year, so through COVID, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it's all still fresh in your mind. Is there this one pitch, this one meeting where you're like, you know, I really want to forget about that moment? I know. I came in straight from, I don't know, the wrong meeting or whatever, something where you really like, wow, that was a black day.
Yeah, I think that for that question, we have to go a little bit more back into the past, because skin is already, we are working on skin for 2 years now. So at first we did some market validation, we had some user tests, whatever, and our MVP last year. And we had a very successful MVP with 150,000 users. We got the Google Play Award. So everything was looking pretty good. And then we have had all these VC sessions. And I remember the last one I took part in, it was with a UK-based VC, and really in the meeting I was crying because it was so hard. It was so tough. He just took all the questions, all the things like founder against founder then. So he really played a game with us to show us you are not ready. So that was pretty mean. But after 1 or 2 days, we sit together as founders team. We recreated the vision. We took this as chance to really create Skin 2.0. And this was then the moment, beginning of this year, to found a new story with an even better pitch. And now we have investors on board, we got funding, but I think we needed that to really understand, okay, the way we are like going through is not the right way. We didn't change the product at all, but we just changed the setup and the story, and it was so helpful. So it was me. It was super hard for me personally, but it was so important for the company that I grew during that.
I can
meeting.
just imagine how that must feel if that happens to you in the meeting itself. I know. So, I mean, even more great to hear on the one hand for sharing that moment with us. Thank you. And then also that you really took it as an opportunity specifically to learn from. So you said it was a rather mean VC who really played games with you and maybe pitched you against each other, pitted you against each other. But in the end, probably that's really successful. It's like having critical people, maybe. It's and maybe another takeaway is, of course, it's easy to surround us with people, and it's also necessary. We have big fans, but it's not to forget about the ones who are really critical, because usually those are the ones who really provide you the learning curve.
Yeah, sure. Sure. And I remember, maybe I can share one more thing about that. So I was in the Google Female Founders Program last year. We were 10 female founders together, and we had really sessions for sharing these moments like I just mentioned. And everybody was super open-minded. And the most valuable thing for me from this time was, it's not just my fault, because every startup has these kind of like hard periods of time or hard challenges, and it's so okay to fail and to not go into the right direction, but to be a good, I mean, as founder, you're also leader of the team, right? So people following or kind of following your direction, and it motivates them to see when you grow. And it was so important, not just for me, also for everybody here, to go through that time together and to see that at the end, it's okay if not everything is going well, right? So you have to be confident and to believe in your vision and in your team, of course.
So really create also a peer group of founders that are going through the same situations, that are willing to open up and really share their story, the behind the scenes look, so to say. Don't feel
because
so
if
alone.
You just look into LinkedIn, for example, you get crazy, right? Because everybody is sharing success and this is going on. Even me, I'm sharing my own experiences. I'm sitting there and telling my co-founder, oh, wow, everybody's just going that way. But look behind the scenes. It's just like creating a good story, right? But everybody struggles with different things, and that's normal. And
actually, I want to touch upon what you just threw in there, because it builds a bridge to what I'm also going to talk about with Diksha in a moment, amongst some things, is that you said you had a group of female founders that you specifically shared experiences with. You are a female founder with specifically a tech app in the beauty industry. What we usually hear, I can't obviously tell from own experience, that this is something where specifically female founders have to outperform their male counterparts, specifically when they have a tech product and when they're in the beauty sector, because usually you are sitting in front of 90% male investors, and they probably usually don't get beauty. So what's your experience there? Like, how often did you have to work against that unconscious bias, or did you feel that you have to add something extra just because you're a female founder in with a tech app?
Yeah, I mean, super often, to be honest. And I mean, if I'm outside at a meeting, I'm wearing a nice dress, have my hair done. So this is then also something people just put you into, okay, she is beauty. So that's super hard. But I have one positive thing, to be honest, on my side. So I studied electrical engineering. I'm an engineer. So this is then exactly my next answer. So I'm always trying to go through this very confident, because I know that it is not just beauty. And even if it would be beauty, it's not too bad, because it's a good market with good products and you can really have an impact to a lot of people, right? But I think that some of my female founders friends, they are really taking this role and then feeling like, oh yeah, you are right, I'm a female founder. So it's really about how you are dealing with this thing, right? And I think that is the main advice here. Even if people think so, you should be confident enough to say, No, it's not true, right? Because fact 1, fact 2, fact 3.
May I ask you, is that something that you discovered over time, that you already went in there? Because I think not only are male VCs most likely unconscious of their bias, but maybe as a female founder, you're also not really aware that they might look at you differently than they do look at the next male guy pitching. Is that something that you put some thought in, that you specifically looked at, or that you just did not care about?
I mean, I personally not really care about, because I'm not afraid of this comparison. I mean, I was like working for Siemens, there are a lot of males. So I think it's fine for me. But to be honest, behind the scenes, we are a founders team of a male and a female, right? And in the first meetings, we are always together. And then we see directly, like, what is easier, if he takes the lead or if I'm taking the lead. And then nobody is here jealous or something. So sometimes I just say, Martin, just go for it. Just take the next call alone. Because a funny thing on the other side is, for example, in the VCs, some analysts, like female analysts, they are more likely if they speak to a male. So because between women, unfortunately, sometimes there's a kind of, I don't know, if it's like not fighting, but it's sometimes harder than a very nice man talks to them. So we just use that as a good thing for us, that we are a female and a male one, and then just choose whatever is better for the company in this situation and not for us personally.
That's nice. So put your ego on the back bench for a moment and just really strategically use whatever resources you have in your founder team, and share the lead every once in a while.
I mean,
because usually a classical one could be that I see a lot of as well. You have in a team, you have the one person pitching because maybe cliche, they studied economy, and then you have like the tech guy, and he's usually just focusing on the tech and not getting into the pitch. So with you guys, you really made sure that both of you are on the pitching front.
Yeah, not just we, also our team. Everybody here have a pitch training with us, because everybody's talking to partners or customers. So I think everybody should give you a feedback about what we are doing. And but in general, it's really like you said. So we see each other as a team, and I mean, we are humans. So of course you like some people a little bit more or on an easier way than others, or you have a better connection to some people. So therefore, why not choosing that as a good thing for you and not overthinking that? Why is it? Or is it because of gender? Sometimes it's just because of emotions, right?
Thank you, Maria. And I can see in the chat already that Rajesh really loves what you're sharing, and Shelly strongly agrees with you. So also to our audience here, please put already your thoughts, your questions, and your personal failures in the chat. We'll come back to that in 15 minutes, just after I spoke to Diksha. So please put your stories there in the chat. It would be great to hear them, what you went through, maybe in your founder story or in your VC story, because there are VC failures, of course, as well. So thanks a lot. And well, yes, I'll be happy to have you back here in the panel in 15 minutes. So Diksha is already on the line. Welcome, Diksha Ayucha, and she is basically from the Incubate Angel Network. But not only, she really has quite a history already. She's been the co-founder of Cedarwood, an ad tech startup. She's been the founder of Collaborator, like a boutique consulting firm specifically targeting startups. And she also has spent a lot of time really trying to empower women, specifically in the tech sector. So there's a lot of angles we can now have in the 15 minutes. Glad to have you with us.
Thanks, Ax. Glad to be here.
I know you've been in the Zoom call already, so I could see you nodding a lot of times while I was speaking to Maria Lisa. Please just chime in there already.
Yeah, I actually loved a lot of the points that Maria made, right? And, being a female founder myself in the Indian ecosystem for the past decade, I resonate with so many of them, right? I feel the landscape today is a lot more positive, is a lot more appreciative, of women founders. And that was my motivation to kind of do what I do, because 10 years back when I was launching my venture, I was literally in college. I could count the number of women who were founders in India and even globally on my fingers, because that's how rare we were. It was tough because without an ecosystem, entrepreneurs can't thrive. But fast forward to 10 years today, with a lot of awareness, a lot of talk about diversity, and also I feel the trigger point has been that I feel to some extent men are really riding this change, right? Diversity is not only about women. It's about the men and women who come together and say, hey, we know that innovation is at its best when teams are mixed. Or as a company, you will have better ROI, or I can give my investors a better return if we have mixed teams, right? So multiple changes have happened, and I think it's a very promising time right now, Zach.
Thank you, Diksha. And you're so right. It's like usually we really get stuck at just the most superficial level of diversity, and that is men and women. And I mean, it's great if we get to that level already. That's a big change, but we really have to look at all the other layers of diversity. What I would like to do with you is a bit different, because usually we plan to talk about hiccups, but I would like to put in a little like a masterclass for male VCs now watching, because I asked so many, the numbers are out there, as you said, diverse teams outperform binary teams. It is just as simple as that. Nevertheless, male VCs, if you look at it statistically, still tend to invest much more in binary teams. If I talk to them individually, they're always like, I am not biased. I just look at the idea, I look at the talent and the team, and that's why I invest in. Science says differently. So what would be your recommendation to male VCs? Like, how can you get aware of your unconscious bias, and what traps are you likely to walk in without noticing?
Absolutely. It's a great question. And I think the only right answer to this is that most VC funds, or VC as an industry itself, lacks diversity. And that's where the problem is, right? When you're a group of people who look alike, who've gone to the same educational institutions, you will unfortunately carry some biases, right? And it's very tough to, say that, hey, I'll attend this gender lens investing class, I'll start becoming aware, and that will start, somewhere reflecting on my investment decisions, right? What's a more realistic and practical view to deal with this is, if I look at, my VC team, okay, who are the partners, who are the analysts, who are the associates? Very few women there, right? So can we do something to bring in women at a leadership level at the VC space, right? Because as an investor, you might have a thesis on one particular sector, or you might understand certain areas of markets, but you're not going to know all. Similarly, it's very important to have people on your team who understand the products, the companies, or the way women build companies, right? Because that is fundamentally different, or teams that have both male and female founders. So Zach, the simple answer is that until and unless they start realizing the importance and the power of diversity that comes to them as a VC fund when they have more women in their teams, it will be very tough for them to see that in a startup, and I mean, I can really say this because there are certain funds where now women are active partners, they take investment decisions. And if you actually look at the data, the investments that these funds with a mixed group of VCs, both male and female, end up making in companies that are diverse is much higher. So I think we need to go to the root cause of the problem rather than saying, how can I get rid of a bias, which is, humanly very tough.
Okay, I love that approach. So instead of really trying to learn the different perspective, simply physically change your team. Get a woman in there, get somebody in there that brings a different diversity aspect when it comes to sexuality, when it comes to ethnic background, international background. Just get people with a different life reality in your team. I think that's a tough nut to crack, because if I look at VCs, mostly the picture on the landing page, at least here in Germany, is usually 5 male white guys. So even though economically the numbers say differently, so to all the VCs listening at the moment, please share your thoughts in there. do you have this topic on your agenda already? Are you really working on it? And if so, in which steps? Would be great to hear. If not, we'll come back to that maybe later on today. But let's come back from the diversity topic to the topic we originally had as the headlines, and that's the hiccups. So Diksha, what's your top 3 list of personal hiccups, days you would like to forget, pitch scenarios that you would never want to mention again? Let us hear it.
Awesome. So I think the first thing is, as a founder, when you're very passionate and you really want to see change, you're also inherently impatient. And what that means is you might be working at the speed of lightning, and somewhere you start assuming that everyone who's in your team is also going to work at that lightning speed, or any stakeholder. And that, that's one of the big mistakes that I have made, right? Because it's unfair to assume that everyone else feels so strongly or wants to see your company succeed the way that you do, right? And what that does is that actually kind of leads to a lot of frustration. It leads to a lot of disappointment, right? And as a founder, you need to realize that while you might be going at X speed, you also have to adapt to what the others are going at, right? Because everything is not, in kind of your control. On the pitching side, to be honest, like Maria was saying, there is no one perfect pitch. But I can actually, relate an incident, that kind of occurred or rather happened to me about a couple of years back. So when I was launching Incubate, we wanted to raise money because, we wanted to create a space and a very sustainable, profit-worthy model to bring in more diversity. And surprisingly enough, a lot of investors themselves reached out to us, right? And we pitched to them. In fact, we had term sheet commitments too, right? But during this journey, I realized there was a complete misalignment of visions, where what we wanted to achieve was completely unaligned with what they wanted to achieve. And, as an end result, we actually said no to the money. While in the short term, it was very tough for us because the liquidity and the cash would have helped. But now when I look at the scenario, I think it was a great decision, because the people who stick with your company are what define it, and not just the money alone, right? So that was one of my biggest learnings. I feel that money is available when you're pitching. You will get a yes and you will get a no. And sometimes because we hear so many no's and we get that one yes, we want to pounce on that. But as an entrepreneur, you really need to answer, is this the other person you want to have as part of your company, building or rather seeing your vision come to reality, right? So that was the second one. And the third thing is literally people. No matter what business you're building, whether it's tech, and I built an edtech business, which is now a much larger company. And I always say this, that edtech is more about the ed than the tech, right? No matter what industry you're in, people are going to be your biggest asset. And the sooner you realize that and you figure out a way to actually attract the best talent, retain them, and motivate them continuously to, kind of achieve what you want to do, that's when you hit success, right? Everything else kind of fits into place. So those are the 3 things that at least, I have come across in my journey.
I think those are some great takeaways. If I start at the back, it's really prioritize people, not tech. This is what sticks with you and takes you through whatever pivot you have to go through. And before, as you said, I can just only imagine if you are the founder and you carry the responsibility for a small team already, you need to keep them afloat, you want to keep them on board. It probably is a really tough moment to decide, do I really want to go for this one funding I have right in front of me, or still risk having no funding for the next 3 weeks, maybe even? That's often a critical time. I can just only imagine how tough that is. You mentioned earlier when you go into the pitch, I just wonder how easy it is if you go into that pitch specifically maybe as a young founder and you're all on adrenaline, you're all pumped up, you really want to deliver, to really then pause and switch into listening mode. I can just only imagine it's really tough to actually listen to what the VC then has to say to you. I know that for myself, when I walk from stage as a moderator, it's really hard for the next 1 or 2 hours to actually listen to what people have to say. Is that something that you need to be aware of as a founder in a pitch scenario?
Yeah, so I actually often now I'm on the other side because we've just launched the Angel Network, so we listen to more founders, than actually pitch. But what I feel is, of course, as a founder, when you go into the pitch session, you go in thinking that success is when someone will give me a term sheet or put money on the table, right? However, I think that's a little incorrect. VCs and investors come with very, very strong networks, right? And a lot of them want, like, I think every VC wants to back money, but they also have a business model. They have a fiduciary responsibility towards the capital they've picked up from LPs, and that's why they can't say yes to every founder. But they actually want to help in any other way, right? Making another connection, introducing them to your network, helping you maybe crack one business deal. And I think that that's the time the founder should actually pick on and listen and make notes, right? Because it's about relationship building. If you are able to crack a good relationship with a VC, whether that's through listening, whether that's through asking them for a favor, even if not money today on the table, I think that's a big win. So I would say listening is tough, but if you just broaden your horizon of what you consider getting in return apart from just hard cash, I think you'll find listening a lot more easier.
All right. I think that's really one that I also hear often. That's a great point. Is like, do not only see them as your cash cow sitting in front of you, but as your doorway to really important and crucial connections you are not aware of. That's a great one. Yeah. Thank you so much, Diksha. We have already reached the full 15 minutes. It's been a fast-paced ride. Let's get Maria Lisa back on board and Ashish, and let's have a little discussion amongst ourselves. And of course, with the audience, let me just have a look at the chat because I saw that Sarang wrote a couple of comments while we were speaking. So let me just have a look at that. So he says, I can relate to Maria Lisa's story about the mean VC, but it's moments like those that become the biggest propelling factors to move forward. Yeah, he says like he has some mentors who are just brutally honest, and that's something that he really values because they are the catalyst for him to move forward. Yes, he just agrees. Those are really the situations that move you forward, those grueling moments. Ashish, have you run into some mean VCs? Mean in brackets.
So many.
In brackets, yeah.
Oh, yes. There have been many situations. I think as a founder, I think Diksha and Maria both mentioned these points. I think as a founder, you have to be, there will be many no's in the journey, but you really have to stick to your fundamentals because ultimately you are the one who has more context in the company you're running, the environment, the business model. So there will be harsh comments. I mean, there has been in my journey also many harsh comments in terms of this won't work, this won't fly, the business model doesn't work this way. Come back a couple of years later, or you need to change this thing, change that thing. So I think it's all part of the process. You get to learn, you get to filter out the noise. I think, if I can say so, you understand, and when the alignment happens, in one meeting it's a click. You know very well with which investor you can work and you can see working together.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we do not have a VC now directly here, unless maybe you, Diksha, would you consider yourself a VC as well? Like, because you said you listen.
I am the opposite of being mean, Zach.
Yes. So as from a VC perspective, maybe what kind of mistakes do VCs maybe sometimes do? From that experience, Diksha, what's your, because I mean, obviously that's a very different approach, having been a founder, than now starting investing. What are your learnings there?
Yeah, no, so I think one of the, fundamental things for any investor to kind of understand, right? And I mean, I'm saying this apart from the fact that I'm always going to be a founder first, is that VCs are in business because of founders. If founders did not have ideas, VCs would not have a business model, right? Sometimes I feel like VCs, with their limited knowledge, like entrepreneurs are the ones who are subject matter experts who come up with innovation. VCs are generalists, right? They understand money and how do you grow money and how do you scale a business. But fundamentally, what problem you're solving, for whom you're solving, why it's needed to be solved is what you need to rely on the entrepreneur and their understanding for, right? So I feel sometimes because there's a little bit of this power dynamic shift. where VCs feel, yes, we are the ones who control the money. They sometimes become more complacent and actually do not understand that the entrepreneur has worked hard, brought a business to a particular level, has thought of some innovation that did not exist, right? So let's give them due credit for that, right? So that's one of the biggest mistakes, right? But I feel like that's soon changing, Zach. If you speak to a lot of new age VCs, they really want to be out there, help founders, learn from them, work with them, right? Because ultimately, if I'm going to be a part owner in your company, I better get along with you.
Mm-hmm. So you just have this disbalance in power. You have one person with a lot of money and the other one who has a lot of knowledge, but sometimes you seem to put the focus more on who's actually got the money. Is that something that sometimes you felt, Ashish or Marie-Lisa, that they look down upon you maybe, or it feels like it? Maybe they actually don't, but you feel like looked down upon, or that they do not really try to understand what you're working on?
I think there are two things for me. So the one is, this is what I mentioned about the pitch, right? Therefore, you need a good story, because they hear, I don't know, even in COVID, it was getting worse, right? They have, I don't know, 20, 25 sessions a day. So always a founder pitching something. So if your story is not on point and not very clear for them, they will just feel like, okay, too complicated, next move, let's move to the next thing. And I think also during COVID, when there was no chance to like meet the VCs in person, like to convince them with your energy, with your attitude, with all the things, it was even harder to find a good fit, because it was really like, you really feel, okay, I have 30 minutes, but then I have to jump to the next meeting. So it was really, really rough. And I think that was, we needed some time to get used to it, because I think we are stronger in meeting people in person. So this digitalization of the process was not pretty good for a product that is a little bit more complex. This is how we felt here.
I think that's something that we heard all throughout COVID, is that like the relationship building is really tough. It's actually easy to maintain a relation if you've already met in person, if you have that strong bond, but to build it from scratch, that's a really tough one. Yeah.
Yeah, and to be honest, at the end, all the people who were investing in us were people we met even through COVID in person. So of course we took care of all the regulations and all the stuff, but we always like sit together in any way, see each other to get some trust, some ideas about how somebody thinking, talking, moving, I don't know. And after this one meeting, everything else doing online is totally fine, but we really needed that to bring our vision to the people.
But I also like what you said earlier, is that they have, especially now, they have a pitch, they have a 2-minute coffee break, they have a pitch, a 2-minute coffee break, 2 minutes. So I guess as a founder, you really have to be aware of that. Where is that person that I pitched to coming from now? What have they gone through in the previous 5 hours, and how do I make a point? How do I stand out there? Ashish, what are your thoughts?
So in my experience, what I've seen is, definitely pitches have increased a lot. They are running short of time. To give you some stats, in India itself, you have more than 50,000 startups and 200, 300 funds at max at this point in time. But from my experience, what I've seen is, the relationships which have really worked well, apart from investing, has been the VCs which are much more compassionate, I think, who are ready to listen, not just the elevator pitch, but are ready to interact after the pitch itself. Have built really terrific relation, and I think that is another part of the journey wherein you're just not looking for growth capital, but in terms of as an individual, as an organization, if they can come on board and mentor you, I think that's another big opportunity at the end of the day if you're interacting with them. So I think that side, there is another side to this entire picture also. So I think that's also equally important and crucial to build that sort of relationship and understanding. At the end of the day, ecosystem is very small. So if you are able to, take whatever kind of way, not just help in terms of only capital, but the other ways also, I think it's very beneficial.
Thank you for bringing that angle. I've been very pitch heavy with my focus in the last minutes. Let's look at the much longer period that you spend with VCs, and that is once they're on board and they're preferably a great partner to rely on. what are there some common mistakes? I don't know, have you lost contact with the VC because you didn't check in often enough? Like, what kind of mistakes can you run into maintaining a VC relationship? How do you keep them happy? Or what do you need to do to make them unhappy? What's your experience there, Diksha?
So I think one thing that really works, and I tell all founders is, a no today doesn't mean a no forever. And VCs actually love it when you come back to them with certain updates. Just maintain a very, very simple, crisp investor update that goes to everyone you've spoken to on a monthly basis with anything that's relevant, whether it's revenue, whether it's partnerships, whether maybe you hired someone really, really nice. Because VCs, and like, we really also want to see what the companies are doing, right? Because ultimately, at least at an early stage, the bet is on the founder. And if the founder is out there actively trying to make the company a success, it gives us a lot more confidence in betting money, or rather, representing them in front of some of our other investors who might want to do that. So I think definitely keep those investor updates running.
And that's if they haven't invested in you yet. But if they've invested already, like, what are maybe some common mistakes, or what should you do in order to then, make an investor that's already on board unhappy over the course of time? Like, how can you make them angry? How can you make them disappointed? What are some common mistakes there? Do do some founders maybe go like, okay, he's on board now, let's focus on some other things, and you neglect your VC? Marie, I see you nodding there.
Yeah, because I think it's pretty like similar to what Dika just mentioned, because this is how I'm working with them, even if they are on board. So I'm always trying to give an answer before they are questioning. So if I'm having something great in mind, I just write a short note, and whether it's email or WhatsApp, most of my investors communicating via WhatsApp with me. I'm just giving them a very short update. Hey, here's some great news. And so they're feeling like, oh, great, something is going on. She is working on that. That's pretty good. And I think the mean situation is just if they have to ask for anything, and if they feel that I'm hiding something. So therefore, I'm always trying, even if there is a challenge, I try to communicate that. So I'm just going to my investors, calling them or writing them, hey, this is what I'm facing currently. If you have any thoughts or ideas, just let me know. And so they are feeling like I'm part of the game, I'm part of the team. And this is super important. And the second thing we are doing for that is twice in a year, we are having our Skin family meeting, and there we have all the team members together. We are like partly remote, so not everybody sees each other often, but we also invite our investors, so they got to know the team, and not just me. They see, oh, they are real people. And also the team sees that what I'm telling them is true, because that's also something, oh, she's always in investors workshop, But if they really see them, they feel that, oh, it's great, we are growing. So I think this is how we are doing that.
A couple of things. Please, Diksha, continue.
Yeah. I love what Maria said, right, about making VCs feel that they're part of the problem, they're part of the family, right? I mean, at the end of the day, look at it this way, right? They're also part owners. So any problem of the company is also their problem. And it's actually their fiduciary duty and their humanitarian duty to help you. And a lot of VCs want to help, right? So she's right. You don't need to hide it. You need to tell them, hey, this is what I'm going. I don't know what to do next. Could you help me? And that kind of changes the mindset of a VC who says, oh my God, I'm so angry at this company, to saying, okay, it's a problem. All startups have a lot of problems. Let's kind of, have all hands on the deck and solve it together, right? So they're almost like a team, and not that, very, very investor founder relationship.
I think you should, like, you are a team. So VC and startup, it's a team. It's not, I'm not making like my monthly reporting like a how to say, like in school or something. Okay, now I have to perform. I'm really trying to, like, of course, keep the story going on, but always to show, okay, we all have to be in that, and we all have to work together. And I think really the relation, like how you are living them, is really important also for the success of the company.
There were a lot of takeaways in there already. So do not solve the problem first to approach your VC only with good news. Actually share the problem you're working on because they might have valuable insights. I love what you said is that maybe you count your interaction, and if you realize that you reached out to the VC 3 times and he initiated it 5 times, you're on the wrong side of the balance. I love what you said, Marie-Lisa, is that you want to reach out more often to your VC than he does or she does to you in order just to make them feel they're included and you're proactive. And I love the WhatsApp group. That's something I heard a lot of times as well, that founders actually have a WhatsApp group where they pool all their VCs into one group just to very fastly send out quick updates and make sure all of them are updated. Is that something you do as well, Ashish?
Absolutely. I think having a group really makes a difference. And one point I'd like to add is from a VC perspective, if you're part of, like one of my company was part of a larger investment firm, they tend to, the other side, the negative side, if I can share a little bit, is if you're not the portfolio company who is performing well, right? If you're not meeting the targets on number, the attention usually goes towards the one who are performing well in the portfolio. So that is the other side. It has to be definitely, they are always there as a team and always looking to help the founders. But at the end of the day, they also have limited time. And if it's a large portfolio, 100 to 100 investments, the focus and the attention tend to usually go toward the winners who are ahead of the stack, a few of them. So I think setting before funding or investment, setting realistic targets of what the capital you're raising. And if you're able to meet those targets, I think it's equally important to have that continued growth and support from the VC.
I love that point. It's like really expectation management. If you set too high expectations, they might put you as one of their portfolio losers simply because you put expectations that were clear you cannot reach. So expectation management set realistic targets so that your VC really thinks you're performing well or feels like you're reaching the targets that were set. Wonderful. I see we're already at the end of our time, unfortunately. It's been a very lively, great talk with you guys. Thanks really for sharing your experience here with me and all of our audience. I will say how we continue, but before I do that, let me say goodbye to you guys. Thanks for having dialed in and making it a very lively, fast-paced talk. So thanks, Diksha, thanks, Marie-Lisa, and thanks, Ashish.